welcome to our 7th episode. Today we are going to be talking about Daniel in the lion's den. We start off in Daniel 6 verses 1 through 9. It seemed good to Darius to appoint 120 satraps over the kingdom, that they would be in charge of the whole kingdom, and over them 3 commissioners, of whom Daniel was one, that these satraps might be accountable to them, and that the king might not suffer loss. Then this Daniel began distinguishing himself among the commissioners and satraps because he possessed an extraordinary spirit, and the king planned to appoint him over the entire kingdom. Then the commissioners and the satraps began trying to find a ground of accusation against Daniel in regard to government affairs, but they could find no ground of accusation or evidence of corruption, inasmuch he was faithful, and no negligence or corruption was to be found in him. Then these men said, "We will not find any ground of accusation against Daniel unless we find it against him with regard to the law of his God." Then these commissioners and satraps came by agreement to the king and spoke to him as follows: "King Darius, live forever. All the commissioners of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the high officials and the governors have consulted together that the king should establish a statute and enforce an injunction that anyone who makes a petition to any god or man besides you, O king, for 30 days shall be cast into the lion's den. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it may not be changed, according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which may not be revoked." Therefore, King Darius signed the document, that is, the injunction. Daniel had done such a good job in the kingdom that King Darius planned to put him over the whole thing. His integrity was above all the other princes and satraps. The others in this court were jealous of him and tried to get the king to issue a decree that Daniel could not follow. Since Daniel was above reproach, the men could not find anything to accuse Daniel of except of worshipping his God. When Darius agreed to this, he likely saw it as a way to unite his kingdom. The law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked, doesn't mean that the king couldn't change his mind, but it would be a huge embarrassment if he did, because he would have been wrong on account of the gods. Another factor to Darius making this decree was when all the other high officials agreed, so this might have also pressured him into signing it. This was a lie, however, because obviously Daniel did not agree. Now we continue our story in verses 10 through 18. Now when Daniel knew that the document was signed, he entered his house. Now in his roof chamber he had windows open toward Jerusalem. And he continued on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God, as he had been doing previously. Then these men came by agreement and found Daniel making petition and supplication before his God. Then they approached and spoke before the king about the king's injunction. "Did you not sign an injunction that any man who makes a petition to any god or any man besides you, O king, for 30 days is to be cast into the lion's den?" The king replied, "The statement is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which may not be revoked." Then they answered and spoke before the king, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the injunction which you signed, but keeps making his petition 3 times a day." Then, as soon as the king heard the statement, he was deeply distressed and set his mind on delivering Daniel, and even until sunset he kept exerting himself to rescue him. Then these men came by agreement to the king and said to the king, "Recognize, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no injunction or statute which the king establishes may be changed." Then the king gave orders, and Daniel was brought and cast into the lion's den. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Your God, whom you constantly serve, will himself deliver you." A stone was brought and laid over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring, and with the signet rings of his nobles, so that nothing would be changed in regard to Daniel. Then the king went off to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no entertainment was brought before him, and his sleep fled from him. Daniel was a loyal subject to King Darius, but he knew the King of Kings deserved a higher loyalty. The power to obey God above everything else takes us to realize that he is ultimately in control. Daniel's prayer life consisted of praying in his upper room privately 3 times a day. This doesn't mean he only prayed 3 times a day, but he prayed 3 times a day in this format. He knelt down towards Jerusalem with his windows open, but with no intention of impressing other people. Even though this decree was issued, He continued this knowing that he could very easily get caught. He did not disrespect his king, he just knew he needed a higher respect for God. In a sense, he obediently disobeyed. Instead of blaming other people, the king took responsibility for his own action, even though he deeply regretted it. Daniel served continually and prayed continually, and this made up who he was. When he was in the lion's den, there is no doubt that he prayed, and even had a better night's rest than King Darius. His heart was greatly troubled in the decision he had made. Now, to end off our story, we read Daniel 6:19-28. Then the king arose at dawn, at the break of day, and went in haste to the lion's den. When he had come near the den to Daniel, he cried out with a troubled voice. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you constantly serve, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel spoke to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, inasmuch as I was found innocent before him, and also toward you, O king. I have committed no crime." Then the king was very pleased and gave orders for Daniel to be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatever was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. Then the king gave orders, and they brought those men who had maliciously accused Daniel, and they cast them, their children, and their wives into the lion's den. And they had not reached the bottom of the den before the lions overpowered them and crushed their bones. Then Darius the king wrote to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language who were living in all the land, "May your peace abound. I make a decree that in all the dominion of my kingdom, men are to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and enduring forever. And his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed, and his dominion will be forever. He delivers and rescues and performs signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has also delivered Daniel from the power of lions." So this Daniel enjoyed success in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Because Darius couldn't sleep, it was easy for him to wake up early in the morning to go check on Daniel. He had a great respect for his God, especially after he saw that God had sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions in the den. In the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11, Daniel is known as the one who, by faith, stopped the mouths of lions. No one asked the king to put those who accused Daniel in the lion's den, but he did. And not only them, but their children and wives. They didn't even make it to the bottom of the pit before getting devoured. The whole book of Daniel is about standing firm and standing up for God. Story after story, we see how God is convincing the hearts of his people. Daniel prospered. He was found blameless in God's sight and in the king's sight, and he prospered. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much for watching, and have a blessed day. Bye.